This is Football at 4.
I'm surprised Johan Dotson didn't have a little bit more success in Washington. I know the quarterback play wasn't consistent enough, but coming out of school, he was everything you wanted in a wide receiver. Really good with routes, good strong hands, great with the ball in his hands after the catch. I think he seamlessly fits into Philadelphia. He's not going to be demanded to be the primary or number 2 target, and Kellen Moore, the new offensive coordinator, has somebody that can really be the third or even fourth pass catching option outside of Dallas Goedert.
That was Dan Orlovsky this morning on the trade against for the Philadelphia Eagles. They land Johan Dotson from Washington. And, obviously the one thing about the Dotson deal is what kind of role does he have? Where does he fit in? Why did Washington give up on him? Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast to give us some instant reaction to the deal as it happened a little earlier today. So now we know that Dotson is in. What does it mean for the Philadelphia Eagles? Geoff Mosher joins us now from the Inside the Birds podcast here on another edition of Football at 4. Moshe, what's going on, buddy?
Mike, how are you doing? I got to say, I was listening earlier, that was a really pathetic attempt by you and Josh to think of a recent, in the last 10 years, Penn State receiver who's actually been a good NFL receiver. I mean, Allen Robinson and Chris Godwin may not be all pros, but one guy led the NFL in touchdown catches. The other guy has had 4,000-yard seasons in 5 years. I mean, come on.
There hasn't been like a guy who's been like a Pro Bowl consistent player, is my point.
Consistent is Chris Godwin. I mean, 4,000-yard years in 5 years.
No, and I said Godwin was really good. It's unfortunate he got hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, but why was that unfortunate? He came back and had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons with Baker Mayfield being his quarterback for one of them. I think the hurt just hurt that year, but he was having a great year, and he came back just fine.
All right, Godwin's the best then.
Yeah, and by the way, to your point, it's not like we're Ohio State, but it's not like Penn State has ever been known for putting out great wide receivers.
No, that was the point, is that the wide receiver, and that was part of my point, is that Dotson gets drafted as the 16th overall pick, and he has been a disappointment so far. And, a lot of Penn State wide receivers have been. So let's get your thoughts on Dotson. Why has he been a disappointment?
Well, it's funny. The guy has 11 touchdown catches in 2 years. The first 4 of them came in the first 4 weeks of his career. He had 3 touchdown catches in the first 2 games of his career. So only 200-yard games in his career. He was probably overdrafted at 16th overall. I think a lot of people were surprised when he went that high. He had a great last season at Penn State, but he's a Z receiver, a little undersized. Nowadays, most of your top 15, top 20 receivers are those, 6 foot tall, almost 200-pound guys, electrifying, acrobatic type guys. And Godwin was never that. He was just very consistent, smooth, and his personal people saw him all over the place. I had a team say they thought he was a late first rounder. I had a team that felt he was a third rounder. So there was a lot of variance on him. He probably went higher than he should have gone. I'm sure the quarterback situation there didn't help him. It was a different offense 2 years, different quarterback 2 years. But he's also a guy who didn't establish himself as a real presence the way, say, Terry McLaurin did there.
Yeah, I mean, you got a first-round pick. He's a guy you think is going to come in. He's really been, a guy who's been in the 500-yard range. He's had some drop issues here. How do you see him projecting with his role in this offense?
Well, he's going to be I would imagine he'll be the slot receiver, number 3 receiver. He can be an outside
Well, he's certainly
receiver.
not taking over for Brown or Smith, that's for sure.
No, yeah, of course not. No, he can play. He can play outside as a Z receiver, a movement Z guy, if they want to move Devontae Smith around a little bit. But mainly what he does, Mike, is give you a little bit more comfort as a experienced slot receiver, that you don't have to rely on 2 rookies, Anaya Smith and Johnny Wilson. One guy who had a bad start to the camp has gotten better, Anaya Smith. The other guy, Johnny Wilson, 6'6", never really played the slot. They think he can play there. But again, he's been dealing with a concussion for a week now. You're not asking those 2 guys or Britton Covey to now step into a role where they have to be the full-time slot. They have to be what Quez Watkins was, or Jason Avant was, or Nelson Aguilar was, because I don't think any of those guys are ready for that role. And I think that if they didn't bring in Johan Dotson or someone like that, then you probably would have seen more of a piecemealing. You would have seen more Grant Calcaterra with Dallas Goedert also out there as 12 personnel that's really supposed to be 11 personnel, because Calcaterra is in the slot as a flex tight end. Mainly now you have a little bit more stability with your slot receiver. And that to me is the bonus there, is that you're not rushing anybody into development and you're comfortable with what you've got, because that guy is Johan Dotson has played that position.
Yeah, and that's a good, Geoff Mosher's with us from the Inside the Birds podcast. They land Dotson. What does that mean now for the rest of that room and these other guys? Paris Campbell, John Ross, the two rookies, Covey. Now everybody kind of bumps back one, and how does that all look now in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine they keep 6 receivers. They're starting to Jahan Dotson 3. You drafted 2 rookies. You're going to keep them. That's Johnny Wilson and Nia Smith, 4 or 5. And then Britton Covey is your punt returner, 5. I would think Britton Covey would be 6, and that would kick Paris Campbell and John Ross off. And you hope to bring them back on the practice squad. You have a talk with the agent and say, hey, there's a good chance that, especially Paris, right? You're healthy. You're on our practice squad. You got 3 activations. We might even be able to sign you if we get an injury or something happens. Adam and I discussed on our emergency pod for our Patreon members that maybe Covey is a guy who you try now to waive and then bring back on the practice squad, and you use other guys like Ania Smith as punt return, just so that you can keep Paris Campbell to have another veteran. But I doubt that. I think that in this case, Covey is the 6th receiver.
Geoff, Dotson, I asked this question to our listeners earlier. I'll ask you. I mean, he's been a guy who's been like in the 40-catch, 500-yard range. If that's his production in Philadelphia, is that a win?
I don't know. It sort of depends on what everybody else does. I think that they're not asking him, unlike Washington, which needed him to be your 1A or 2. The Eagles are basically asking him to be on offense the 4th or 5th option, right? You got to think your 2 wide receivers, Brown and Smith, are your top 2 options. Dallas Goedert is your 3rd option. And there might be days where Saquon Barkley, I think you hope, theoretically with the offense, catches a few more passes than your slot receiver. So you're not asking him to do much.
Yeah.
So when you ask me from a statistical standpoint, is that enough? I'd probably say yes. I think the bigger question, and maybe you were about to get to this, is all that worth giving up a 3rd-round pick for?
I was going to say, yes. That was getting down that road of, all right, what do you think of the compensation they got for a number 3 receiver? And I agree with you. If he gets you 50 catches, 40 catches, 500 yards, he has 11 touchdowns in 2 years, that would be gravy. But you're right. Like, to me, Moshe, I agree with you, is that over there, you're the 16th pick. You got to be a 1,000-yard guy. Here, all right, you failed there. Come here, less pressure, 3rd guy, give me 500 yards. His problem has been some drops, which he did not have that problem at Penn State.
Not at all. He was a great pass catcher at Penn State, very smooth and very fluid.
Very good route runner, too.
Yeah. So if I were to ask you, and I think we already had this conversation, but to reprise it, before today, what was your expectation of the Eagles offense as far as a ranking in 2024? What did you expect them to rank?
Oh, I had this discussion. I was on Birds 365 this morning, and we had this discussion, and I said they've got to be, statistically speaking, for me, one of the top 3 offenses in the league.
Right, and you felt that they could with their personnel, right, even before this trade?
Yes.
Okay, so my point would be, if this was already an offense that, even with those questions at slot receiver there, that we felt had enough talent to be a top 3 or 4 receiver, why would you use a 3rd-round pick instead of just kind of on waiver cutdown day, if a Jamison Crowder type player gets cut and you can plug him in, a Cole Beasley type player gets cut and you can plug him in, 1-year deal, veteran minimum.
Well, okay, let me
use a 3rd-round pick.
Let me ask you this. Let me interject with this. He's got this year and 2 more left on the deal. Does that factor in as to why you give a 3rd-round pick for a guy that was a 1st-round pick?
You don't want to count 5th year. The 5th-year option on a wide receiver drafted in the 1st round is going to be way too much of a price tag for what Johan Dotson's producing. you got this year and next year.
Okay, well,
that's basically what.
All right, so I guess you have this year and next year where the guy was in the first round. Does that equal more production than a third-round pick is going to give you? I guess that's what you're weighing out.
Well, I mean, do you see his situation being any more than the fourth or fifth target share even next year when you still have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, and Dallas Goedert?
No, of course not. No, but
and to me, it's not.
how much did Kellen Moore say? I value having this guy. I don't know.
I don't know. I doubt it. I mean, I guess Kellen Moore, the slot receiver, has been really important in his offense. You know, we had a really good story on that from Sam Finkel, our analytics guy, on our website right now on InsideTheBirds.com. Slot receiver is important. But again, Johan Dotson has not been a productive slot receiver, and they've got two kids that they're trying to groom for that by next year, either in Aniyah Smith or Johnny Wilson or Britton Covey for year 3. So, I just think a third-round pick was – I feel like they could have brought in a veteran after the cutdown who could probably give you similar production to Jahan Dotson and save that third-round pick for up to the trade deadline if you really need a safety or an inside linebacker. To me, those were just as dire in the backups as it is at receiver. And if you were to ask which side of the ball are you more curious or concerned about it with a top 5 finish, you wouldn't say the offensive side, you'd say the defense.
Right. Yeah. And listen, it's funny, because we asked the question the other day, which new coordinator will have a bigger impact this season, Fangio or Kellen Moore? What do you think the voters said?
I would have to think that that's a good question. Probably Fangio, because the defense had a further way to go than the offense.
They said Kellen Moore, 70-30. But
okay.
It's because why? Why though? Because everybody has the fantasy football mentality of more yards and more of this and more of that. And I don't want to say the Eagles got caught up into that either, but adding another weapon on offense, they had to assume what we have right now is not good enough.
I guess so. I mean, I know the Eagles offense really took a nosedive at the end of last year. Still finished as I think 7th or 8th in the league in scoring. I mean,
yeah.
The basic job for Kellen Moore is to come here and give them an answer for when the defense throws those wonky, really blitzes at them. Give them an answer. Give Jalen Hurts a little more options than the stale offensive last year gave them that they still managed to score 24 to 26 points a game with. For defense, I mean, it's not just give them an answer on third down, right? It's give them a new look, a new identity.
Yep.
A new approach. I certainly think there's more on Vic Fangio's plate.
Football for Geoff Mosher. Question from a listener, Glenn in Northfield, says, guys, last year the Niners said their main attack on offense is to focus on the center of the field where most teams, including the Eagles, are not strong behind the line of scrimmage and focus on yards after catch. It was devastating to the Birds last year. Can you explain how the Birds got better in that area? Did they?
I can't. I mean, obviously C.J. Gardner-Johnson helps them. He's a very good safety. He's a good playmaker. He can flip the field with you. But you look at the inside linebackers that they have, and this was a big topic of discussion in today's Inside the Birds podcast with me and Adam. Zach Bond, Devin White was known for the last 2 years for being sort of out of position and not disciplined. You look at the Packers, week 1, opening night, Matt LaFleur is an elite play caller in this league, and he's got a lot of different weapons to use. And there's no doubt about it. When you're attacking the Eagles defense this year, just like the year before and the year before that, you're trying to aim at the middle of the field and use misdirection, use motion, get these guys out of position. Test Zach Bond's instincts as an inside linebacker because he's playing it for the first time in his career. Test Devin White to see if he is more disciplined than he's shown over the last 2 years. Test Reed Blankenship if you can get him isolated in one-on-one situations.
Well, that's the thing, is how much athleticism and speed that I have at the linebacker spot that can turn and run and show that ability to cover. I don't know. We don't know anything about Zach Bond. Dean, to me, total wild card. I don't know what to expect. He's been hurt so much. I don't know what to think he is at the pro level. This is obviously he's a total wild card for me, Nakobe Dean.
It's funny. Somebody mentioned to me, someone in the league said to me, I think all the Eagles linebackers are wild cards. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
They're
not wrong.
Not just Nakobe Dean, but Jeremiah Trotter. And, for the reasons, the starters I just mentioned, They all are.
Moshe, they made a trade today out of right field. I mean, it happens on a random Thursday. They've been known to do this. Is there one more move up Howie's sleeve? And if it is, where does he have to make that move?
Well, man, they just gave up a third rounder. I know they got a fifth rounder back. They gave up some draft stock to move up, right, to get Cooper to Gene, which is also a trade with Washington, if I'm correct.
Yep.
So I don't know that they want to mess around and give up too many more draft picks. So I don't know how they're going to go up. That's sort of why I'm saying I thought it was.
They do have a lot of corners in that room, right?
But do they have tradable corners?
I don't know. Somebody else interested in your young corners? I know the Eagles probably aren't thrilled about having to cut some of those guys.
No, but what kind of return are you going to get for a young, unproven corner? Like today, I saw a guy got traded, a rookie got traded, Michael Barrett.
Yeah, Seattle and Carolina.
Right. So the return you're going to get for a Keely Ringo, right, or an Eli Ricks is going to be similarly an unproven player who just may have a little bit of good tape, but not a lot of great tape, and you're just doing a player-for-player swap like that. You're not getting yourself a pretty good starting linebacker for Keely Ringo. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. True.
So I don't know. I'm not saying that there are no moves left, and there may be some other players outside the corner that are tradable that I haven't really thought of right now. I can't see it happening on the O-line where they've got a lot of young depth, but we'll see. I do think that they'll be aggressive when the waiver wire, when all the cut down happen, and they'll look.
I don't know. Is Bradbury still tradable?
Again, yes, but you're talking about like a conditional sixth, right?
Right, not a player for player type of deal.
Because of the contract.
Yeah,
if it's a player, what you need is an upgrade at either safety or linebacker. You need a player who can come in that you feel like could be a starting player for you. It doesn't have to be a Pro Bowl player, just a real good starter for you, right? So you're not gonna get that by giving someone James Bradbury to be their third or fourth corner, with that contract.
All right. Geoff Mosher, everybody, from the Inside the Birds podcast, and, of course, right here on Football 40. You want to hear the Phillies lineup while you're with me?
Yeah, go for it.
It's very interesting tonight. So Josh and I were talking about if Marsh is back in, who's out, Wilson or Rojas? Wilson and Rojas are both in the lineup tonight. So the odd man out tonight is Alec Boehm. After a 36-game on-base streak, he's sitting tonight. It's Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Castellanos in the 4-hole, Stott in the 5-hole, Real Muto, Marsh, Wilson, Rojas. That is your Phillies lineup tonight. There you go.
So if they're down one, but they have the bases loaded in the ninth inning and Boehm's sitting on the bench and Rojas is up and there's two outs, that he's going to keep Rojas in there, right? And say, hey, got to give Boehm the full day off.
I don't know. Is today a sneaker day or a spike day for Boehm?
Great question. I don't know.
All right, buddy. Well, good pinch hitting today. See what I did there for Andrew DeCecco on this Football at 4 Thursday. Thank you, man. All right, Geoff Mosher, everybody, from the Inside the Birds podcast.